Herbert Thomas Aquinas Lim.
Good morning, Mr. Lim.
L-I-M.
Could you tell me, sir, where and when you were born?
Born in Vancouver, October the 4th, 1925.
Did you spend all your early years in Vancouver?
Yes.
What did your father do for a living?
Actually, my father was a businessman, farming, grocery store, importing, exporting.
And did you help your father in his business?
Yes, in my early days. I shoveled a lot of horse manure in the farm.
How many brothers and sisters did you have, Mr. Lim?
2 brothers, 1 sister.
And in order of birth, where did you stand?
Let's see, my sister, my brother, and then me, and then a younger brother. So I'm number 3 on the line.
Was your father an immigrant to this country?
Yes, and my grandfather.
Just stop for a second, Tim. Mr. Lim, you indicated that your grandfather was an immigrant to this country, and he was a businessman, as was your father.
Mm-hmm.
During the period that you grew up in this country, were Chinese Canadians treated appropriately?
Well, I don't know what you mean by appropriately. You're talking about social advantages or privileges. I would say definitely no. I remember when I was going to UBC, University of British Columbia, because I was Oriental, even though I was born here, I couldn't take up law, pharmacy, accountancy, dentistry, I guess. Those subjects were restricted to us, and we could only take up engineering or arts, Aggies.
Do you remember being told why that was?
Because we're Chinese. We accepted that because this is the way it was, and we tried to survive under those conditions. That's the name of the game, and you played by those rules then. I graduated from Vancouver College, and I think I was the only Chinese at that time. That's back in '43. Only Chinese in that school, and I was the first Chinese to graduate from there in '43.
At that time, could Canadians of Chinese ancestry vote?
No, they couldn't vote. They couldn't buy property, even up here, Shaughnessy, in West Vancouver, they couldn't own property.
During this period of time, you went to university, and you studied engineering?
Yes.
Do you recall the day that Canada declared war, September 10th, 1939?
Yes.
What did you think that declaration, what effect would it have on you?
That time, 39, how old was I then? 16, 15? The impact was that the labor market opened up for the Chinese. They started to hire people, Chinese especially, shipyards, farming, and to me, this is the only advantage I saw with regards to the war. Basically, it was the gradual opening up of opportunity, jobs for the Chinese at that time.
What was your father's reaction to the declaration of war? Did he ever speak to you about it?
Well, because Japan has been at war with China before that, I think 37. The Chinese in this community, and I guess all around the world, have been anti-Japanese, and they probably feel or felt that now is a time that we can fight against the Japanese now.
This was after the Japanese declared war on the United States, bombing Pearl Harbor and invading.
Especially then.
Yes. When that happened, when Canada declared war on Japan, what impact did that have on you?
Basically, nothing, because I was involved with schooling, as an individual. I didn't think about anything else at that age, just schooling.
At a later time, you volunteered to join the service. Can you tell me why that was?
That's a good question. Some British staff officer interviewed me at UBC, and he explained that they needed Chinese-speaking Chinese to go behind the enemy lines in Malaya, Singapore, to prepare for the invasion of Singapore. And it took me a while to make up my mind, but anyways, when I finally did, I volunteered. You got to bear in mind, though, if you were going to school in those days, you were exempt from military service. They were considered, with the other essential services like farming, cannery workers, shipyard builders, they can claim an exemption, And as I said, as long as I was going to school, I didn't have to worry about being conscripted. So, nevertheless, I volunteered.
When you volunteered, what was the reaction of your mother and father?
Total hysteria. She even wrote and phoned to Ottawa and says and complained that they shouldn't take me. They should accept me. Yeah, which is a typical Chinese family. Why get involved like that at my age?
So the decision had been made. You volunteered. Where did you go from there?
Well, actually, I was naive enough to think, gee, if I asked to be attached to the Armored Corps, I wouldn't have to walk. I'd have an inch of metal between me and the bullets, and I'd be safer and everything else. Anyways, I ended up with the engineers, which was a little different. RCE.
The Royal Canadian Engineers.
Yes.
And you had been taking engineering training up until then at UBC.
Yes. But that had nothing to do with the military engineers. No. Engineers involve, explosives, low explosives, high explosives, booby traps, Bailey bridges, everything connected with engineering. I was not infantry, although I did 25 miles route march in one day. We had to do that.
Where did they send you for your training, Mr. Lim?
Oh, close by up in Chilliwack, where there are a lot of mountains and rivers to ford, a lot of trees to go around. I took my basic there.
Do you remember the month and the year that you took your basic training?
It'd have to be after September of '44.
After you finished your basic training, where did they send you?
Well, after basic, which was, I think at that time, 10 weeks, we were supposed to go to what they call TS, trained soldier, which is another advanced basic training. But I was supposed to go to officer training corps back east after my first basic. But then this British officer interviewed me again and asked if I still want to volunteer. I said yes. I've gone this far now. And he said, well, don't go to OTC because we need you right away. I'll get you a field commission. You know what a field commission is? So I said, it's all right, being young and naive. Because in those days, most of the commissioned officers came from universities. Everyone that joined up from the university were automatically commissioned after going to OTC back east. Anyways, I had strep throat in Ottawa on my first draft, and I caught the second draft going to Southampton, London. London, we stayed there for a couple of months, training again. But we stayed in an apartment in London, right on Wimpole Street. You heard about Elizabeth Barrett Browning, in the front of our apartment was a plaque, "The Barretts of Wimpole Street." If you ever went and read any of her poems, Anyways, from there, some of us were lucky enough to pick the right stick. 10 of us, 10, not me, but they flew to Bombay, and we took the boat instead. 30-day trip through the Suez Canal to Bombay. We ended up in Bombay first.
The other young men that were with you coming from Canada, were they all of Chinese ancestry as well?
Well, all of them. And they were supposed to all be able to speak Chinese, because basically they're supposed to be interpreters.
What was the morale like of those young men that you were with?
I guess from exuberance to despondency, both extremes.
When you arrived in Bombay, what do you remember about that city?
Fabulous. The gate of Bombay. As a matter of fact, there's a story there. My mother's from India. Her grandfather was a contractor that built the gate of Bombay, and she presented the queen with a bouquet of flowers. I don't have the picture of it to the queen at that time, so we go a long ways back.
From Bombay, where did you go, Mr. Lim?
Oh, by cattle car, and I mean cattle car, to a place called Pune, which is about 120 miles southeast of Bombay. 114 degrees in the daytime. Very hot.
What did you do there?
Well, they made us climb this mountain, about a 4,500 feet mountain, up to this mountain fortress called Singar. I have a picture there. Singar Mountain. Actually, it's supposed to be for us to acclimatize to the hot weather. Yet it was 114 degrees up there with all the bed bugs and the fleas and all the bugs and the snakes and everything all up there. The only water we had to drink were from wells that were... this is the castle built by the Maharathas back in the 600s. And it was supposed to be impenetrable with 14 feet walls surrounding the top of this mountain. Impenetrable. But we were isolated there. And we didn't have any communication with the other troops. All around our mountain, there were signs as no trespassing, will be shot. Not will be prosecuted, will be shot.
Had you any idea at that time, Mr. Lim, what you'd been getting yourself into?
Little by little, little by little. We took a 3-day psychological test where they put us through. There were over 100 of us there at that time. We came in different groups, and we all congregated there. And I guess after the psycho test, then they determined who's going to go where, who can train, and there were rejects as well, which is only natural.
After they had finished the psychological tests, did they start talking to you about tactical training?
Oh, that's involved all the time. When you say tactical training, we're not privy to that level of administration. I was involved with mainly, had to learn my Chinese again, review my Chinese and writing, and then I went through the Japanese course for interrogation, and we had the jungle warfare training. As a matter of fact, this book here, these people from Chongqing, they were there in 1942 before us. And this is what staggers me, that they were there and we were there afterwards. They went through some of the same training that we took.
All this training was leading up to
Yeah.
certain types of operations.
Yes. Can you hold the camera for a minute?
Talking about the training that you were taking in the castle, do you recall the various types of training that you took?
Well, when you ask about tactical, come to think of it, no, we had to describe the inclination of the roads, the topographical and the geographical layout of the land, things like that. That's what you meant by tactical. Eh? I didn't understand that. We had to go through, and like if you're looking for a landing strip, you determine which way between the valleys, the length of the field, surrounding areas, connecting roads, trails, leading to and from, escape, secondary approaches, and secondary exits, egress and ingress.
At this time, was it made clear to you that you were expected to be agents operating behind enemy lines?
Oh yes, there was never any question or doubt. That was impressed on us at all times. As a matter of fact, every camp that we went to with our training, the first thing they ask you is, you want to change your mind, and nothing will be held against you. You would be shipped back to Pune, and you stay there till the end of the war. You weren't going to be sent back home. They would keep you there because everything is so hush-hush and secret. Our mail actually was sent to London. Nobody knew where we were or what we were doing. See, we couldn't tell anybody who we are, what we are, whether Canadian Army. We had to take our flashes off. We weren't allowed to associate with the other Commonwealth troops, East Indians and everything else. We were kept separate. We had to own our own. We had to cook ourselves. They didn't know what we were doing, and they didn't want us to tell them what we were doing either. So,
as a young man in that situation, Mr. Lim, were you fully aware of how dangerous the job that was going to be asked of you was?
Well, they when they say you're going to be dropped behind the lines, they don't tell you how you're going to get out or when you're going to get out. They assume that they assume that, well, they told us they would be dangerous, very dangerous.
After your training at the castle at Pulnau,
Fortress.
Fortress.
Yeah.
Where did you go next?
Well, some of us went to New Delhi and then to Meerut. Meerut is a British signal school. It's a big camp, big compound. And yet again, we're asked, we still want to volunteer. And some of us declined, sent back to Pune. And we took our signal course. It's a 6-month British signal course, condensed to 15 weeks. When I say signal, I mean wireless operation, Morse code and Morse code. That involve repairing and knowledge of radios, ionic atmosphere, super heterodynes, how to repair, because we had to transmit and receive minimum of 25 words a minute. Now, 25 words is 25 groups of 5-letter words. So 25 times 5, that's about 125 letters a minute, minimum, and it's in code. In code, that would be equivalent of 35 words per minute in plain language. A little technical, huh? So, and you would have to do that minimum transmission and reception before you can qualify. So that was basically what we did.
At the conclusion of that course, Mr. Lim, did you qualify?
I guess I can tell you, yes. After 7 weeks, the CEO asked me, come up to the office, to be in the office. I went up there and said, Herb, do you want to volunteer again? We're going to send you to jump school. We're getting close to the end of the war now. We're very anxious to speed things up. Out of the over 100 people there, see, each class was consist of eight in the group. So class 1 would be first week, class 2 would be second week, third week, up to 15 weeks. They took me out of the 7th week. They didn't ask anybody that went through 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 15. Anyway, I felt kind of honored, and from there I went to jump school in Calcutta. But we never know the name of the cities. We were northern Calcutta is a big airfield, and that's where we took our parachute training. Actually, there were only about, out of the whole group, there were only about 5 wireless operators that graduated from that course, out of over 120. So, for what it means.
A wireless operator operating behind enemy lines would be of critical importance, would it not?
Oh yes, they are very short. They're very short as the wireless operators, especially Chinese, Canadians. Even with the ones in the book, they're very short.
What do you remember about the jump training that you took?
I think there's a mental block there, because I'm afraid of height. You know, you actually to do jump training, theoretically you're supposed to volunteer. They cannot force you to jump. They can't push you out there, in theory. But when there's 6 to a stick, say, and you're over a field, and if one man hesitates 1 second, or grabs on and don't release, the guy behind him will end up in the trees. There's a very small drop zone, very small. And we jumped from 900 to 600 feet. 600 feet was what we did our night drop. It was just open up and bang. You don't even see the ground. So, but I'm scared of height. So, then I'm a pilot. I fly.
Are you suggesting, Mr. Lim, that you were sometimes pushed out of the airplane?
Oh no, not me. No. I've seen him. I've seen him being pushed out. I've seen him collapse right in front of the door. The legs give away, and they're sitting on the ramp at the door there. And what can you do? You can't drag him back in. You got to push. So the jump master, they call him, got to push him.
Jumping from such low altitudes, did that cause many injuries?
Well, first of all, they say, we allow 35% casualty because we only had one shoot. One shoot. Now, you see the Americans, even the Canadians, all have primary and secondary shoots. And when they gave me the one shoot, I said, where's my other one? He said, that's all you get at that time. And so I thought, hey, how dispensable were we at that time, And they say, well, if it doesn't work, bring it back. We'll change it for another one. But it's logical because by the time you find out that the chute is not going to open, it's too late to open the second one. It's practical, actually. Why waste a second chute at that height? With a normal drop in Europe, say, they're jumping from 1,000 to 2,000 feet. You can see all the chutes coming down, At least 2,000 feet, they have time. And for the secondary chute, one of my night drops, I landed more or less on my back, and I made a bad back landing because I was oscillating, and I couldn't see how far I was from the ground, because you're supposed to land with knees and ankles together as one, and then roll. You got to roll, So to lessen the impact, because the impact is equivalent to jumping from 18 feet high. That's how it knocks your breath out, especially with your equipment as well. You have 50 pounds of equipment. I was knocked out, I think, for over an hour. They couldn't find me because it was in the jungle. I have a, finally, I have a Veterans Affairs disability pension now because of that. I ruined my back and my neck. I think what about 65%?
Was that during a training jump?
Yeah, training jumps. See, the training jumps almost is identical to operational jump because the dangers are all there at the same time.
After you completed your jump training, Mr. Lim, where did you go from there?
Oh, let's see. From Jessore, I think, that airport north of Calcutta, we went to Madras on the east coast of India. From Madras, then we went to Ceylon. This was our final jumping off place. This is our operational base from Ceylon. I took my wife there, as a matter of fact, and found some of the places we were stationed at. But in those days, they were classified as ME military establishment, 25 ME-90s. No names to speak of, just numbers. As a matter of fact, all through India and Ceylon, the same thing, all military establishment because they were military established, secret establishments. From there, we went down to Ceylon to further our training, jungle warfare, more in demolition, more in wireless training, and then our code. I was the only one that had the code to this in our group, and the code was called letter one-time pad. See, that was supposed to be unbreakable. It's based on poems, like my special one of them was the stag at eve at Junksville would dance the moon on Monan's rill. Iambic pentameter mode, have you ever heard of that?
I've heard of the
well,
poem.
things like that, things like that. That was my poem, and it identified to me. And they also took fingerprinting of my sending. Everyone sends and writes different, but they can identify my sending by taking a tape of how I send. So anyone hearing it, they'll know it's me, regardless of whether I send in the proper signs or not, introductory signs.
In your group, how many men would be with you?
With my team or with the whole group?
No, with the team. I'm sorry.
With a team, there's a team of 6. There would be the two round-eyed officers. I call them, no offense, but I gotta dig this, and one wireless, and 2 paramilitary, and that's 5, 6, and 1 decoder.
Let's stop there if we could, Mr. Lim. In Ceylon, you were working with your team of men. This was a team that was going to be used in deep penetration behind enemy lines?
Yes.
Your duties with that team were as a wireless operator?
My main function was as a wireless operator, WT, with all my code. And then I was a demolition expert, more or less, because I dealt with time bombs, time pencils, incendiaries, booby traps, plastic explosives, blowing bridges, track trains, and I was supposed to instruct on that as well, so I had to know more than the average. Same thing with the weapons. Because I was an expert marksman, that more or less led them to think that I would be a good instructor for weapons. So I had to train them in Sten guns, Brens, machine guns, pistols, all sorts of pistols, Japanese Nambus, German PPKs, Lugers, all types of weapons, and Canadian Brownings. Brownings were the first one that came out. At that time, it carried 15 with bullets with one in the chamber. Can you imagine at that time? A special issue. Right? We had quite a bit of special equipment, even with our wireless equipment. It was in a suitcase this size, weighed about 22 pounds, and that can transmit theoretically 12 to 1,500 miles. That's why I mentioned that the ionic atmosphere. It goes up and then it bounces back on weather, the ideal weather conditions. They will go that far, even farther sometimes.
What precautions were given to you men in the case of capture?
Well, we had gold coins, sovereign coins, watches, drugs for bribing, and some with what they call L pills. L pills are poison pills. It's like count 5 and die. There's a book in that, Count 5 and Die. That was actually given to SOE members, Special Operations Executives, which was what we were. That was our umbrella. You have the SOE, and then you have Force 136. Then you have other forces like Force Z, which is in Australia, and Indonesia, and in the Balkans is another force.
So at that time, you were issued with materials that would help you bribe local officials
and
if
survive.
you were captured, or to survive, but you were also issued poison because you were not to be taken alive.
Yes. Because I have a low tolerance for pain. I asked for a second one, they says. Turn me down.
You indicated that Force 136, which was the force that you were involved with, what can you tell me about that force? What was its general composition and purpose?
Force 136 is actually, I didn't even know too much about it until I start looking into it, even up to now, 55 years later, because I had to sign what they call the War Secrets Act when I was demobilized. I couldn't say or tell where I've been, what I did for 25 years. So that more or less closed our mouths as to what we did. Not that we want to talk about it, because after the war, we just want to forget what we did. We're glad to survive and thankful. So we didn't even talk about it. It's only until the last 10 years that we start talking, because time is getting short now, and because nobody knew too much about it, then it's maybe time to talk about it. Force 136 actually is under the umbrella of SOE, Special Operations Executive. It's a quasi-pseudo army, not even funded by the regular army. It's funded by from Whitehall. Anyways, Force 136 was what we operated under. And besides the Chinese Canadians, there were Thai, French Indochina, Chinese involved with Force 136 as well. I didn't find this out till later. Like now, I find out that the KMT, Kuomintang, which is under Chiang Kai-shek from Chongqing, they were with Force 136, but they didn't know about Force 136 until after the end of the war. Then they were told that they belonged to Force 136. See, they didn't know. It was so secret that it was even stupid, because nobody knew about it, and they maybe did a good job. No, the left hand did not know the right hand what we were doing. That's the whole thing.
How many Canadians would you estimate served with Force 136?
I'd say over 120 that went over, that volunteered. You got to remember too, in those days, whether you were conscripted or whether you volunteered, you did not have to go overseas to fight. You had to volunteer, and as I say, even the conscripted, you can stay in Canada and serve the rest of the war in Canada, safe and sound.
So these 100 or more Canadians of Chinese ancestry, without the right to vote in their own country, volunteered to go overseas and place themselves in danger.
You put it just right. They volunteered. They knew what they were being exposed to, rightly or wrongly. They volunteered. That's all.
Mr. Lim, coming back now to your team, the six-man team that you described. You referred earlier, if you recall, to two officers, and you referred to them as round eyes. Tell me, why were there white officers?
Well, you have to remember that we are colonials, whether we are Chinese or you. Canadians are all considered colonials, Australians and New Zealand, and that means you're two steps below an ordinary British rank, whatever it is, and because they're round eyes, they cannot expose themselves. They would stay in the camp and give directions to the Chinese that looks like locals, They can infiltrate, penetrate, and expose themselves. The white officers did not go out at all because right away they would be caught. So they were safe.
Tell me, Mr. Lim, earlier in our conversation you indicated that you had been promised a field promotion or a field commission. And I understood that you had taken officers training corps at University of British Columbia.
Correct.
Were you promoted to officer rank?
Well, I wasn't even promoted to staff sergeant. I came back as a private. And I didn't care because, commission at my age, at that time it didn't matter. Because even the pay that we got, we're Canadian Army attached to the British Army, we got British Army pay. And if anyone's familiar with the British Army pay, it's like tuppence a day. Tuppence is how much? Never mind I didn't find that out till 25 years later, that we were paid British Army pay. Because pay didn't mean anything. We were paid 45 rupees, which is 1/4, 25 cents a rupee. So $8 a month. See, we were treated as levies. In spite of the fact that what we had to do, or what we were going to do, we are actually prepared to lay our lives on the line. In spite of that, we were treated below colonials. We were treated as levies. West Africans, Indian troops, our rations are actually below the British Army standards. Our pay was British Army. Even our traveling was third class, which was not supposed to be, because troops were supposed to travel at least second class minimum. I didn't find this out till later, mind you. And even with my parachute pay, I didn't get it till I applied to Ottawa 20 years later. My parachute pay, things like that. I wasn't concerned about the commission. It's just that it was promised to me, and I did my best. I was good. I was a good soldier. I did everything right. I was one of the best, actually. Top swimmer, top marksman, top radio operator. They picked me out of 7 weeks to go in. So I must have been something, special. No, there was a lot of things that wasn't right. We weren't treated right. by the British.
It seems counterproductive to have two members of your team that are white officers that can't be used in the actual operation.
Well, they were involved with the administration, and I should say the tactics involved. Someone had to, because and the underlying theme of all this is the British wanted to get back to control Malaya. This is the whole thing, and they don't want to lose track of that. Same thing with the operations in Hong Kong. The British wanted to get back to Hong Kong, just like the French want to go back into China.
After your training was completed in Ceylon, what month and what year was that?
It's August, the beginning of August 45. The war ended August 15th, isn't it?
So very shortly after that, the war ended.
Yeah, we were waiting for the next full moon. All ready to go on Liberators to Singapore. But for better or for worse, this is the way things turned out.
So in fact, if the war had not ended when it ended, you would have been paradropped into Singapore or into Malaya somewhere.
Yes. Yeah, there would be a different story then. It'd be a big catastrophe.
Can you estimate now the percentage of survival of members that were paradropped behind enemy lines?
Oh, I'm not privileged to even think about that. The fact is that even without the enemy, the jungle is your worst enemy. Besides myself, I always say we are our own worst enemy. You actually, the enemy is within me. I had to overcome myself first. With all to survive in the jungle, to live in the jungle for 2 weeks is like living in Hades for a lifetime. The bugs, the snakes, 80% of the people catch malaria in the first week. The food we ate, just to survive in the jungle was bad enough. The jungle was our enemy, actually. Everybody's enemy. If you ever read that book by Spencer Chapman, The Jungle is Neutral, that would give you an idea what it's all about, without even meeting the enemy.
What do you remember on the day that the war ended? What do you remember about your reaction?
I can't remember it all. I remember one guy was so elated that he went berserk. I won't mention names, but I can't blame him, hey. And some of them weren't going to go anyways. Even when they got down to the final operation base, some of them declined to go in, to jump in. And I can't blame them.
How long was it before you returned to Canada?
Oh, after when the war ended, we were just dropped like a hot potato. We were dumped in the beach in Ceylon or Colombo, and forgotten about. I took her there, as a matter of fact. Beautiful place. But we were just dropped. We were just dumped. They didn't care anymore. And the funny part of it is that Force 136 ceased to exist at the beginning of 1946. They closed it all down, destroyed everything.
How long was it before you got back home to Canada?
The beginning of the year, I think. March and April, somewhere around there. Or 40, 45, 46. 46.
When you got home and saw your mother and father again, what was their reaction on seeing you home safe?
Oh, they were elated, I guess. So was I. I got off in Westminster. The train, everyone got off in Vancouver. I didn't want it.
Why did you get off in Westminster?
I didn't want to meet the crowd.
Why didn't you want to meet the crowd?
Because I shouldn't have come back. I was disappointed.
You thought you should have been killed?
Yeah. It's a total commitment on my part. If you don't think about coming out alive, then you can concentrate. You can do everything to the best. Just like the samurai. Just like the just like the Japanese pilots. I took my wife back. I was the only one out of our whole group that went back to that fortress. She understood. I had to reclaim something I left there. To be whole again, you know. I left something there. That was my dedication. I don't know whether anyone can understand that or not.
With all that commitment, Mr. Lim, you still couldn't talk about what you had actually done?
No. Who can understand it? I'm sorry, you know. It's funny how you can get emotional after all these years, isn't it?
Well, there were events that were very important.
I mean, you know, things that, how I felt, what motivated me. And this business of coming back, which I shouldn't have.
When you think of it now, why were you that dedicated and focused on what you were doing to the exclusion of your own life? Why were you that dedicated?
Maybe, I don't know, maybe I was an idealist. Because I read so much about the sacrifices made by other people, dedication. I didn't go there to survive. I went there to die. Sounds kind of funny now. But my wife understands.
You went there to do your job as well as it could be done?
Oh, yes. I was good at it. Yeah. It was almost my destiny.
When you look back now, Mr. Lim, over these 50 plus years that have passed on your service in Force 136, when you think back on that and all that you've learned about that force since, how would you describe the contribution that Force 136 made to the victory in the Far East?
Force 136 contributed to a large degree to gathering intelligence. Even when Wingate and the Chinits in northern Burma. Force 136 was already involved with Chinese volunteers from Kunming. That part of it is largely untold. They gathered intelligence information, and they actually disrupted the Japanese retreat in Burma to a great degree, and they really didn't receive the credit they deserved with their participation in Burma. And as far as Malay is concerned, hey, if it wasn't for them, preparing the locals for the invasion of Malaya and to establish a stronghold and a basis of operation for the Allied invasion. You can't deny their contribution. It would have been even more so if the invasion took place and Japan didn't surrender, because they had the groundwork where they had 5,000 locals, trained militia in weapons, demolition, and financially supported by the local Chinese in Malaya. This is the thing. But you say, that's their contribution, Force 136.
Was this the most significant group of Canadians operating in that theater?
I'd say that was the only Canadian army attached to the British Army, but still Canadian Army in Southeast Asia altogether. We represented the Canadian Army in that area.
There were other Canadian naval units and Canadian air units, but this was the only significant Canadian Army presence.
Right. We have that distinction, I guess.
When you look back on your return, Mr. Lim, to Canada, you returned to a Canada that was very much the same as far as Chinese Canadians went. Little had changed in the immediate post-war years.
Oh, lot changed during the war. I told you before, opportunities, job employment, businesses is sort of opened up for the Chinese and for the Japanese, I guess, too, or any ethnic race. They start to hire Orientals in government jobs, which we couldn't before. Work for the civil service, City Hall, Hudson Bay or department stores, BC Tel. Those were previously restricted. No, they were not available to the Orientals. But because of the labor shortage, everyone got into it, and that's when they started really to open up on everything.
And things changed from a political and a legislative point of view in 1947. Can you tell me about that?
Well, 47 was actually the year that they repealed the Oriental Exclusion Act that was enacted in 1923, where from 1923 to 47, there were only 25 immigrants coming in at that time. And also, we got our enfranchisement, the right to vote, the right to own property, and as a consequence, contribute to the Canadian economy and society.
It was a long time coming, Mr. Lim, but would you say that the contribution of Chinese Canadians during the Second World War helped in that decision?
I'd like to think so. And not just the people that joined up. The locals held a lot of war bond drives. The feeling there was that, hey, we were helping our country besides China against the common enemy. So they deserve credit for that as well. As a matter of fact, the whole Chinese community were behind the war effort, so to speak, not just the veterans.
Mr. Lim, when you look back on your experience as a young man during World War II and the sacrifice that you were prepared to make and the sacrifice that those of your comrades were also prepared to make, when you think of the conditions that you were prepared to endure When you look back on all of that, do you think it's important that Canadians of this generation and future generations come to understand and appreciate what you men went through?
Yeah, I don't want to be held up as a symbol or anything like that. But I think that future generations, even the future immigrants, should realize that what they enjoy now with all the privileges and the rights of being a Canadian citizen was not always there for them. It was because, I think, of the efforts that the people like the veterans and the pioneers, they contributed to that, and as a consequence, they are enjoying it. And now, all the rights and privileges, more rights than we had at our time. This is a natural evolution of our effort, and hopefully they will continue to remember and to amplify on that, to say, hey, this is our country now. This is Canada. We should contribute to the best of our ability in money resources and mental resources, and not just to exploit it, their positions here.
Mr. Lim, if you had the opportunity of speaking to young Canadians of this generation or future generations about patriotism and duty, what would you say to them?
Funny thing, I gave a speech at a class in North Vancouver, secondary, so that's up to grade 8 now. 625 students, it was counted. And I didn't want to say anything about my war experience or anything. I just wanted to say, hey, what we did because of the future. How do you tell 14-year-olds with a time attraction of 3 minutes? They forget. Anyway, I told them in 30 minutes that they should contribute, forget about their differences, their diversities, and unite for Canada, for the future. I said a lot in that 30 minutes. Yeah.
Mr. Lim, I want you to know, sir, that it's been a great honor and privilege for me to have spoken with you this morning. I want you to know, sir, that your experience and your dedication to this country is greatly appreciated by us. Your service and what you were prepared to do in the Second World War is very much the subject of gratitude. We appreciate very much your effort. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Neil. Thank you.
Now, we'll stop there.
PhD, that's unheard of in our days. The opportunities, education-wise, business-wise. Look at Chinese in all sorts of business here. I don't know about where you come from, but here they're into everything. There's no ceiling, so to speak, that we can see, except in the higher corporate levels. The bank I dealt with for 50 years, Royal Bank, they used to have just one Chinese in that bank out of 50 employees. Now there are one Chinese as an interpreter. Now you go to the same bank, all Chinese.
No, you can't get a job unless you spoke Chinese and English, two languages at the banks now.
Now it's an advantage to have 2 languages, or 3 preferably, because they won't hire you unless you have 2 languages now. So it's sort of, it's come around, it's turned around now, where it's an advantage to be multicultural with languages, because they have more to offer. They have the East and they have the West, and to combine the 2, it's unbeatable. I feel that the local or the average round eye is at a disadvantage because they're not exposed to the other side. It's a big opportunity there for them. But
the airlines, you go in and try and get a job in the airlines. If you don't have 2 two languages. They're not interested.
Yeah, food-wise even, you know, the average
Restaurant.
I limeade beef and potatoes. They don't realize there are so many different kind of food around that it's heaven, you know. So much to choose from, so much to experience. This is life at its best. It's the food, you know. Chinese, you got to eat food. The first greeting they don't say hello or how are you, how are you feeling. They say, have you eaten? Because the stomach comes first. The food is very important. Yeah, just to ask, have you eaten? That they'll know that you know something about Chinese then. Never mind about how you are, how you feel, or it's a rainy day. Have you eaten? That is the salutation.
Mr. Lim, your life has spanned two very different eras in Canada. You talk now about a multicultural, pluralistic society where hopefully those types of racial and ethnic barriers have been dropped or reduced. And you come from an era when they were very evident and noticeable. Looking back now on the evolution of your life and this country, what views would you pass on?
That's a big question, you know. Because I can only look at it from my family, my immediate family, my wife, my children, and grandchildren, their future, their future. Mine is what it is over with now. But hopefully, they will contribute to Canada. Not just to benefit from Canada, but to contribute. I think this is very important. I think that should be emphasized to all the immigrants, my grandchildren as well, to be Canadians. And hey, it's not that they made the choice, but this is what it is, and you make the best of it. And hopefully, everyone will contribute to it to their best of their ability. Because if we don't accept Canada as our country and make sacrifices, then we're just transients. Then we don't have any ground. We don't have any roots. Roots is the main thing. I don't care where we come from. And I've spoken to a lot of like Vietnamese, Korean, and you know, all different types now. Even Chinese. There's so many different Chinese from Malaya, from Hong Kong, from China, from Philippines. You know, from Jakarta. They're all different, but they are Canadians. They should be Canadians when they come here. And that's what I like to emphasize to them, that we're all Canadians, and to contribute.